Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I had some people in the comments asking me about my signal chain and I thought that could be a good opportunity just to show what's going on my pedalboard. The first thing my guitar hits when it runs into my pedalboard is the TC Electronics Polytune Mini. I had the bigger version before, but I just simply switched over to the smaller one because of space issues on my pedalboard. The good thing on the bigger version is that you have an additional DC outlet so you can power another pedal over on the board. That one doesn't deliver that, but there are currently 11 pedals on my board which I have to power up, and since I use the Engine Room LVL12 by Fender, it's not an issue. So I could basically put another pedal on there and power it up when I would find space on here. But for now, I think everything's just fine. There's a 12th pedal, which is a constant beneath the board. Sometimes it's the looper, sometimes it's the ACS1 or a reverb pedal, because I can't fit 12 pedals on the board the way that I would like it. I thought about getting myself a bigger board just to be able to put a third row of pedals onto there. But that thing is really heavy by now, and I don't know if I will carry something that is heavier than this is already. After the tuner, I go into the ring thing, and just let me mention that from the tuner to the Squish As, that is all in mono, and from the Microcosm into Reverb, everything is in stereo. So let's go on with the ring thing. I made a little video about the ring thing, and that one is really an essential piece on my board because my most used setting on there is to use the ring thing as an octaver to make my guitar sound like a bass, which comes in very handy when looping stuff. So I don't have to change the guitar for a bass. I just can leave everything as it is and just switch on the ring thing, which will sound like this. That's my bass sound. And when I switch on the ring thing, it just drops the whole guitar. Let me put off the reverb. What I like to do with that sound is just add an overdrive or a clean boost after, just to remove some of the rumble frequencies and give everything a bit more bite and clarity. And with the carbon engaged, sounds like this. Let's crank the gain a bit. Without the carbon and with the carbon. Yeah, it's really a really aggressive, dirty bass sound without much overdrive. Yeah, and I'm really happy with the way that sounds. The other settings I constantly use in there are the octave up, and a quick mention that I have an expression pedal connected to the ring thing, so I can use it as a whammy. For the octave down setting, I can do the opposite. The next setting will be also a whammy sound, which doesn't push it an octave up, not quite an octave. The next setting is to emulate an univibe sound, and that sounds like this. think that's nice just to add a little bit of movement to the signal. After the ring thing I mentioned, there's the carbon, and without the carbon it's just the clean sound provided by the ACS1, which we can go over just for a second. I use the ACS1 in stereo with Vox amps on left and right, and the IR that I use is the Telecaster by Bogren Digital. That was part of a free IR pack, and I tried some more IRs over the last time, and really that one is made for me because the amount of low end is just perfect for the octave settings. I tried some other IRs and they sound pretty good on guitar alone, but as soon as you add something like an octaver, you miss a whole lot of bottom end. So I just stick with this one, and yeah, I don't think much about IRs anymore. I think the less I think about things like this, the more I can concentrate on all of the other stuff on my pedalboard. So back to the carbon. It's really nice to have a really good clean guitar sound, which I think I have on the board using the ACS1. But when you add layers upon layers with that sound, the guitar is hardly audible with all the things that were going on after I add some more of those pedal stuff. So the carbon helps just to get the guitar sound more upfront, because that slightly crunched sound, that slightly pushed sound adds some harmonic content to the guitar, and there's just more frequencies in the guitar that way. Again, without the carbon. And engage. And there's just the difference between hitting soft and hitting hard is more obvious with the carbon, because when I strum the strings lightly, and dig in harder, then it starts to distort, and with the clean sound there's really not that much happening beneath the guitar getting louder. After the carbon I run into my gain stage, my lead overdrive if you will, and in this case it's the Odyssey. For most of the time it's the Longsport, but at the moment I'm just in love with this one. I bought it 2 years ago I think, and I don't see any reason to get rid of this one because it sounds and feels tremendous. It's such a good pedal, regardless used as just a clean tone shaper, an overdrive, or a distortion pedal. That one delivers. You don't see me or hear me playing much of distortion on my channel, because when I add that full-on distortion to my loops, that sound would cover up everything. And since I improvise most of the time, it's easier just to check if the tone is fitting. But when you have a distortion sound, it's just you immediately hear there's something more going on, and if I'm not sure if I should play that note, it's clearly more audible with distortion. So enough talking, it sounds like this. That's the setting that I most use. Dial back the bass, just add some more treble. Yeah, it's really a lovely pedal, and with the Odyssey in particular, you can decide if the equalizer stage is before the gain circuit or after the gain circuit, or you can skip the gain circuit and just use it as a clean signal shaper. It does that thing really well too, but I don't need two pedals for to shape my clean sound really, so that's just there for distortion. After my guitar passed the Odyssey, I go into Mood, and Mood is really a monster of a pedal. When I first got the pedal, I had the most frustrating 3 days of my life playing with pedals so far. I never knew what Mood was doing, and after 2 to 3 days trying out the pedal, I was just, it delivered nothing but headaches, so I gave it back to the store. During that 3 days, I made some recordings just to try things, and when I revisited those recordings, I think a month later, I discovered all of those happy little accidents, and I thought to myself, okay, Mood is a pedal full of character, and when I would just know what and why Mood is doing certain things, then it would be just a nice addition to the pedalboard. So 2 to 3 months after I gave the pedal back, I just ordered another one, and since then it's a constant on my board and never leave the board. Mood does a lot of things for me, but let me show you my 3 main use cases for Mood. The first thing for me is use Mood as a reverse delay effect, which sounds like the following. Let's add some reverb. And that in particular sounds pretty good if I add another delay afterwards. The delay on its own would sound like this. And adding the reverse delay before. And that's just another example what I mean by the movement of the guitar. I can play just some notes, and the reverse thing will just go on in the background, and I don't have to touch the guitar anymore, which just leaves space for more layers if I would take that effect and that combination of pedals to add a bass layer into the looper. The other thing I use Mood for is a wet reverb. That effect isn't made to stand in the foreground very much, but it comes in very handy if I want to tremolo pick something, and that just helps to space that out and makes it more of an even sound. So when I tremolo pick like this and add another reverb at the end of a chain, then it's just very unintrusive. And the fun part is adding things like the GenLoss after and make that signal a little bit more dirty. And on its own, that doesn't sound like much, but in the context of looping, it's a really nice thing, because not much of the things that I play will use GenLoss, but when I use it, that sound really adds to the whole picture, if you will. The third thing I use Mood for is as a looper pedal, but I don't use the tape side for looping, I use the delay side. With the clock knob I can decide the resolution of the signal, and the more I go to the left, the more time I get out of the delay signal, but the more the signal will degrade it. So it's a good idea to leave it at 12 o'clock. And when I engage the delay and take the modify knob to max to just have the feedback just running in loops, then I have the opportunity to get some loops into Mood, which I can then manipulate. That's the delay signal, which is now going on, and we can add more notes to that. And that will basically go on forever. I can even turn it off, so I can play without feeding anything more into the delay. But we will add some more things. If I speed Mood up, then I will raise the pitch of the signal. And now I can add something more, and when I put it back to 12 o'clock, then I will lower that signal, and I will lower the signal of the thing that I will record now, which sounds complicated, but you will hear what I mean. Okay, let's add something more. Let's turn off the delay. And now I can just play with the speed of the loop by using the clock knob, which is slowing it down on the left side, speeding it up on the right side. And since I can't feed any more delay into any more signal into the delay when it's disengaged, I have the opportunity to put something into the tape side of the micro looper. And I could run that in reverse, for example. Which is a very nice thing to listen to. And now I can manipulate that further if I would pass this loop onto the delay side. Okay, just for the sake of it. Engage, disengage. And now that signal is passed over to the delay side. Let's lower the tempo. Yeah. And now with having GenLoss after, I can just engage that one and cut off some of the higher frequencies, cut some low frequencies, or add things like warble, noise and distortion. The next pedal in the chain is the GenLoss. And GenLoss is, yeah, it's really one of my favorite pedals, even if it's not on my board the whole time. But the first time I heard of this pedal, I was just so fascinated by that sound that made me, yeah, like many people, it made me nostalgic. And it's just a fun thing to play around, even if it doesn't always find its way into songs. It's just really a nice thing just to play around with. On that space on my pedal board, sometimes I have the GenLoss in here, or sometimes the Bug Lengths by Pladusk, and both are really unique pedals, and they are both great on their own, and I really like to just swap them out from time to time. I have the count to 5 on order from Andrew from Little Box Effects, from Ambient Endeavors, if you know that channel, which you should by now. And I'm really curious to hear what the count to 5 will add to the signal. I don't know if it will swap out with the GenLoss or maybe with mood. We will see. Yeah, back to generation loss. I have that running on classic mode because I really like the high and the low pass filter on GenLoss. The dry signal is simply going to sound like this. And now I can add some saturation. And you can hear some noise in the background in the higher frequencies, and I can roll off some of that highs by using the low pass filter. And so now the noise is gone, but the signal still sounds degraded. And by rolling off some lows using the high pass filter, you can get that radio sound. But I mainly use the low pass filter, and let's add some flutter and some wobble using the wow knob. Yeah, and I really like to use just things like delay afterwards. I'm really a sucker for delays. It's a really nice sound to play around with, or just manipulate some things going on in mood with the GenLoss after. After padding the GenLoss, I land on the Squish As Compressor, and yeah, a compressor just makes the quieter notes and the louder notes just more even by pulling them closer together. And you can hear that the sound of the guitar is getting quieter when I pick lighter. And it gets louder when I pick harder. And Squish As helps just to get those two levels closer together, picked very lightly. It's still very audible. And I use that for one reason, because when I loop everything, I end up with basically one stereo track in Reverb, and it's important to get the levels closer together before hitting the looper. When the guitar level is jumping like this, and I record another guitar part which is a little bit lighter picked, then that would be too quiet. And I can't pull up that level afterwards without raising the levels from the guitar parts before. So it's really important to have everything as close as possible together level-wise. I had the Neunaber Yellow comp before, which is a copy of the Diamond compressor. And nothing's wrong with that one. That's a great compressor, but I just wanted to have more control over my compressed signal. And the bonus in here really is the blend knob. The tone knob really is another bonus, because when I decide that that guitar sound simply is too bright, I can just turn down the tone. And if I think that tone's too dull, I can brighten up the signal. I could do similar things using the tone knob, but that would only brighten up the signal when the carbon is engaged and would let the original guitar signal unaffected. And by using that knob, I can just brighten up the signal I use when the carbon is engaged, and when I turn it off, the signal would still be brighter. So that's it. After Squish As, I go into the Microcosm, which gets a mono input, but from there it gets stereo out into the DD500. The Microcosm is a pedal I think most of you guys were heard about, and it's one of the most important pedals that I bought, and not because it's the Microcosm and not because everyone uses a Microcosm, just because of the fact that when I decided to get one, and that one's expensive as you all know, I decided to go into the ambient direction. And without myself buying the Microcosm, I think I wouldn't have made that decision. But since that one is expensive and I just wanted to use it when I got it, I decided to do more ambient and more post-rock stuff. Microcosm really does a lot. It's a reverb, it's a chorus, it's a granular delay, it's a looper. That one, yeah, it's a beast of its own. It's a beast-like mood, but in a totally different way. And I don't use Microcosm much for things which are obvious in terms of, in the context of songwriting. I mean, when I play things like this, every note counts. And adding the Microcosm just makes the guitar fuller and more interesting by adding crazy little things to the background. So all of these little notes are just nice additions, but they're not counting that much and are not that much weighty as those notes. Those are just textures in the background. I can use settings like the mosaic, and the mosaic is more notes get a different kind of weight with that, because those notes are clearly more audible, and those notes are also circled around the thing that I play, but they're not washed out or that soft. I really spent weeks in the Mosaic C setting, but now I'm really a fan of the Sequence C. Which just adds texture to the things that I play without adding too much of a melody or too much notes after. I'm also really a fan of the haze and the strum settings. The haze will sound like this. Let's turn off the delay, turn off the reverb. It really sounds somewhat similar to the sequence settings, but that one I think uses more of the stereo field. Yeah, I think the other one seems to swirl around a little bit more. Yeah, for sure. That starts hard left and hard right. Yeah, and goes over to hard left and to the strum setting. So you could reverse that also, but I don't think the reverse one is really that audible. It's a nice thing to have, but it's not pronounced like the reverse in the mood, for example. So you can add some reverb over here and just make a pad out of what you play. Yeah, that's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever bought. After the Microcosm, I got stereo into the DD500, and I made a video about some of my presets from the DD500. And as I said in that video, that one is a constant thing to surprise me even after years of owning that pedal. A few days back, I did another deep dive on the settings, and there, usually I use either A or B, but the DD500 it allows you to use both presets at the same time. And that's what I engage by diving deeper into the menu, and that opens up a whole nother ambient world by using that one. Because let me show you, firstly, turning the pedal into parallel mode. There, foot switch mode, normal, A, B, C, and A, B simultaneously. So I can have both delays at the same time. And for example, that's my Crystal Dream setting, which sounds like this. No other delay, no reverb engaged. And that's my Terra Echo setting. But those two settings combined to be honest, I don't know any delay pedal which has that sound. I have the expression fader connected to the DD500, and that one allows me just to change certain parameters that are built in the DD500. I can use that to change the low cut frequency, I can change the mod depth, I can change note values, I can change equalizer settings. I can do a whole lot with that thing. And the DD500 allows me to automate basically everything in there. So I can just automate the delay to have the modulation depth constantly changing by turning from 0 to full modulation depth or to full modulation speed. And at the same time ramp the tone or change note values all in one preset. I can do that for 2 presets and have both running in parallel, which is just insane. The possibilities really are endless. For example, as I show in a video, I used the DD500 to pan the guitar signal, which when the fader is sitting here, my guitar is right in the center. And I can move it over to the left or move it over to the right side. And I don't know any pedal which allows you things like this. Maybe some HX Stomp modules let you do stuff like this, but I'm not really sure about that. Going back to one of my favorite settings, it's the reverse grain in stereo. And I don't know why I call it grainy, because it isn't grainy, but that one is a stereo reverse delay which moves from left to right constantly. And that sounds like this. And I can decide how fast that one changes, how far it gets to the left or to the right side, all with the DD500. And really, I think it's one of the best pedals ever designed, really. That one is even, as I said, even after years, I still discover new possibilities with that pedal. So, after my delay, I go into the ACS1. Sometimes I go into the Reverb and then the ACS1, but this time it's just from ACS1 into the Illumine Reverb. I use the Illumine or the Space Force, and I really have to say that I was pretty happy and am still pretty happy using the Space Force pedal. But there's one thing that the Space Force doesn't give me, and that's a big washy ambient reverb and lush ambient reverbs like the slur, for example, or like the spatial algorithm inside the Skylar. I thought about getting the Skylar, but only 2 presets for algorithms doesn't make sense in my opinion. So I went with this one, which is great, really. But I wanted to something more ambient, more headed towards ambient reverb. So I got myself the Illumine just to try. And I think I will keep this one because it really sounds great. And the reverbs in there, to be honest, are not that far away, at least in my opinion. The bonus ones on the Space Force are you have a flanger on the spring setting, you have a dirt reverb which goes into the shoegaze direction, and the Illumine doesn't have some of those settings. And there's a pretty good tremolo reverb in here, which, yeah, the Illumine lacks a bit. Let's hear some of those sounds out of the Illumine. Let's try another preset. Let's add some reverb, add some reverse delay. It's just a bad of reverb that it's really easy to get lost in. The first day I got this one, I spent 2 hours playing without any break in between, and I was covered in that reverb sound. It's really a bummer that the Illumine doesn't have preset spillover, but it has the ability to morph from an A to a B setting, so I can set the A to a bigger room by having the mix and the depth higher, and going to the B setting I could just lower both of them and end up with basically a smaller reverb. So that's just fine for me, and the Space Force does the same thing, which came in pretty handy. The sounds that I use by now are a bigger room, a smaller plate, and having a slow rise reverb, which sounds like this. And that's a good example. A is just a reverb, and moving over to B maxes out the mix, so I get a 100% wet reverb. I have a similar preset going on inside the DD500, which is my Hubris slow attack setting, which has a different character because that one isn't made out of a reverb, it's made out of a delay, and it sounds like this. You can clearly hear the repeats of the delay. And by switching over to the Illumine, it's softer, and it obviously doesn't have the delay repeats in there, but it's sitting inside a bigger room. So both of them will have their qualities, and depending on the things I will throw into the looper, I decide to go with this one or with this one, because those little delay repeats won't be that noticeable if I stack them with other sounds on the board, and especially when there already something is going on inside the looper. And that's a good example. That is a sound that the Space Force is also capable of. But let's take a look at the bigger ambient sounds. That's a thing that the Space Force can't do, but the Illumine just is built to deliver. And now let's just go totally overboard and add some of the things on the board. Let's go with the whammy setting. And then just add some, no reverse. Let's add some pitched sounds from Mood. Okay, let's go with the reverse grain sound, some microcosm into the delay, and that will sound like this. that's just an example for a combination of sound that I haven't tried by now, because it's really, you can do so much with certain pedals, and in my case those pedals are just galaxies of their own, if you will, and I don't think that I will get sick of those sounds in the next time. Yeah. From the Illumine, I go straight into the looper, and I made a video about some things I use in the electric harmonics looper. The one bummer of that pedal is that it doesn't have MIDI sync, and it would be really nice, but I found a workaround just to sync that with my PC without MIDI, and it works just 100% perfect, at least for me. I really love that one. I know how it works. I would love Electric Harmonics to make a successor of this one, to add a screen, MIDI implementation, and the possibility to switch from record play overdub to record overdub play. From the looper, I go into the Canvas Stereo DI by Walrus, and I don't use it really as a DI in here. I visited a friend in his practice space and played the whole rig through the DI into his PA system, and it was just perfect. For here, it's just when I would go mono out of the looper into my amp, then stereo delays, I would lose just one side of the delay. And using the Canvas Stereo, that one allows me to sum the stereo signal, and I can go with one cable into my amp and have the full spectrum of the stereo field. So I don't have to recable anything. It's constantly connected from the DI to my interface and from the DI to my amp, which in my case is the Milkman through an orange 1x12 cap. Maybe I will show that in another video, but I think that's enough for now. So that's a brief overview on the things going on my pedalboard and all of the pedals I use with some of those settings. And I know that was much in this video. And if you made it till here, respect. Maybe you skipped half of it, and you have any right to skip wherever you want. But yeah, it was a pleasure to explain some of that stuff. And if you will, we will see each other in the next video. Till then, I really hope you have a nice day, and bye.